Good afternoon. Thank you, General, for the kind introduction. So, as it was introduced, I am the Deputy Commander of the Hungarian Cyber and Information Operation. You might ask, what is to be done as a cyber guy here in the cultural property protection? So I am the guy who is doing the CIMIC, as the Dutch colleague said. So I've been dealing with 20 years now with CIMIC, and cultural property is like a kind of phenomena which revolving around us when we are on operation. And even though in the very beginning we didn't know it, what was the cultural property protection, luckily we have a huge literature now, and the NATO is really heavily working on it, how to operationalize it. It's always a key word within the NATO or the military, how we can grab these things like cultural property protection. Because the main message from the military, and I'm talking about the Hungarian armed forces, not the NATO allied partners, the cultural property as a default setting is not a primary military concern or task. However, and the big however and the but will be explained later on my presentation. So the next slide, please. Of course not, I will do it. Okay, so the introduction without any legend, I choose this picture because I had some mission experience from Afghanistan, and when we are dealing with locals and engaging on CIMIC, different kind of project, we had always cultural property related issues, and this very picture is when I run a project and we help for the locals to reinforce, not renovated a mosque, which is also not really a military task as a default setting. However, I know it will be blunt. I will be blunt as a Dutch, as we say it in the CCOE in Hague, because we did it for a force protection measures. For the military, sorry for the audience, the main important thing is that we are bringing home the soldiers in the same status as they deployed. And the force protection is the main concern of the commander beside the mission objective, and needs to be reached that mission objective. And the most important thing is the manpower and the soldiers. And if we can do something for the community, we are doing it because we would like to have a better, let's say, relation with the communities and not to antagonize them doing stupid things, as Professor, you just mentioned it, because we don't know. However, I can report to you, Professor, that in the Hungarian Armed Forces that we are not totally blind on this topic. We have also pre-deployment trainings, and we are doing it, but it's not standardized and not institutionalized in a way like you just mentioned and my colleagues from the different allied nations. The CIMIC received this burden, of course, in a brackets, but we are not expert on that. We are not archaeologists, we are not cultural property experts. However, somehow within the NATO, always fingers pointing to the CIMIC that they can handle it. No, we cannot handle it, at least we try, sometimes we fail, usually we fail, but we try. Anyhow, but that was 10 years ago. Now we have very good developments in United Kingdom, Netherlands, Italy, when there are designated units. But not every country has such a lucky position to forming such a unit. So that's all about the introduction. I almost spent 5 minutes with my super introduction. We have, as a CIMICer, we have a golden rule. You see it, you can read it. We never make a promise we cannot keep it, because that's jeopardize our missions on a long run. And this is my motto as a CIMICer too. So my unit, however, we have a strange naming. This is the former Hungarian CIMIC and PSYOPS unit in combination with the cyber. We integrated, but the focus is still CIMIC and PSYOPS, or let's say brother or sister units in Netherlands, the CMI command in Belgium, and basically in every NATO nation we have CIMIC units. These are the ones who are doing the civil-military cooperation. So basically what does it mean? We are the one for the commander, the ears and the eyes within the civil communities, within the international organization, NGOs and so on, to to establish contact with the civilians, because the commander is a busy person. He has no time for always engaging with the locals or the communities on the organization. Therefore, the CIMIC is a designated units or elements who is doing it. And therefore, because of the CIMIC, civil label, we are the one who are dealing with everything which is happening in the civil environment. And the cultural property protection is not a military domain, it's purely civilian domain, and therefore that's the reason the CIMIC receiving the task to deal with the cultural property protection. As I said before, you see the definition from the NATO. This is our doctrine, which is almost outdated, because as we speak, this will be renewed in the CIMIC Center of Excellence in Hague, the NATO nations signing the new doctrine. But the previous doctrine put it under the umbrella of the CIMIC, of the cultural property protection, with many other cross-cutting topics. It changed. I can report it. Now it falls under the AGP 01, all mother of doctrines. So it's a very good news, at least from the military point of view, because every military person within the operation needs to deal with these topics, not just the CIMICer. Because when it was CIMICers, it was a very limited options. Now this mindset goes up, operationalized, and I really hope that in the planning cycle, this will be always a consideration when a big NATO operation is planned, that cultural property protection being considered. That was not always the case for the NATO operation, let's be honest. The characteristic is important for the cross-cutting topics, but you see that it's not a primarily military task. However, it can affect in a numberous ways the military operation. We just heard from you, Professor, even a small tiny thing which we don't know, it's an artifact, and we call it the strategical corporal can kick it, this small artifact, and after 1 hour we can see in the CNN that the NATO operation is like destroying cultural artifacts in an operation settings. It's very important, and the military and the whole operation needs to always keep in mind what you do on the operation, it rebounds back in a second. 10 years ago it was 1 week, now it's a matter of seconds. I can give you an example without naming any nation, but the Quran burning issue in 2011-12 in Afghanistan. I've been serving then on the very day, and it happened on a Monday, and the news was not that fast, but on the Friday when the praying time happened, we had seen the demonstration and basically the angry crowds in almost every Afghan city approaching the NATO bases because they attributed to a NATO soldier who did such a thing, burning Quran, which is absolutely no-go, and desecrifying a holy Quran. It's, I don't know why it happened. It's not a blame game. It's just probably a pre-deployment training wasn't so successful on that particular unit. But that was a real example, and I've been there, and it was not a Good Friday, believe me. Yeah, you see it, why we are doing it, and what are the features of the cultural property protection. These are, of course, it's not my findings. These are the CIMIC Center of Excellence, Hague, when I was lucky to serve 4 years as a deputy branch head, and I saw some booklets what we just drafted, like the cultural property protection. So I committed this crime. I hope it was a kind of good thing. I saw it, somebody quoted, so I'm very happy. So these are why we are doing it as a military, because it's always a civil-military relation and always affecting the civil environment, and as a second-order effect or third-order effect, it's affecting the military operation itself. But again, The next slide, you see already, Annika, you mentioned the cross-cutting topics. These are the 5 which is identified and integrated into the AGP, the CIMIC doctrine. But these are not NATO things. I can ask maybe, but we don't have, who can tell me where is these topics coming from? Definitely not from the NATO. Who was the real originator? What do you think? These 5 important topics on the left side. It's, of course, it's United Nations. So NATO just take it and put it into the military mindset, which we did it very well, I assume. And you see the cultural property protection, I highlighted different color, but the main message is the blue, the mission success. Again, the military operation is not really designed a huge, I'm talking about NATO operation, a huge framework. It's not really revolving around to protect the properties. However, it's a very important thing, but it takes time when in the military mastermind and thinking and planners really understood the importance of it. Who is bringing into the table? It was sometimes the CIMIC, if we are lucky on different level. So again, we are not that lucky that every level we have cultural advisors or we have units, designated units. Most of the units, especially in Hungary, there are no cultural advisors, and I guess in other NATO nations too. In a different or higher HQ levels, we have designated advisors who can bring the point into the table, but it's not all of the unit and not different echelons. Maybe in the mechanized, you mentioned the mountain division, you are, but if you go below brigade or battalion level, you don't find such a person. It's basically, there is no capacity for that. So why we are doing it? That in order to focus on the mission success, and again, it's blunt, but it's military, we are focused on the mission success for the commander, because that's all matters. And everything which is supported, that's important. Which is not, for the military thinkers, it's not really important. I hope you don't get it wrong, but this is military thinking. And these are, I put these very famous historical and cultural sites, you know it. I'm always using in my presentation if I am the owner of the cafe shop, but here I'm not the owner, so I will invite anybody who can name it. In a military environment, I never invite anybody because they not always name it, these pictures. Here probably it will be a bigger success, but in my some 20 years of experience to teaching and engage with students, I never invite anybody for a coffee because they got the point, what are those? But why put I these pictures? Because this was all military or paramilitary or non-state actors' doings, but not, of course, it's not NATO doings. NATO has nothing to do with it because all destruction was from the Second World War, Monte Cassino or Mostar. There was no NATO nation involved. At that time, it was Bosnia-Herzegovina, Croatian, and the Bosnian side. And the Mostar Bridge is a very good example. Who did this decision to blow up? That was the Croatian on-scene commander. Why he did it? It is always a question, but here maybe somebody can name it. It was an illegitimate military target from their point of view, from the Croatian side, because the Bosniaks use it as a military supply route, the bridge. Simple as that. At that time, the Bosnian Croatian army side wasn't dealt or wasn't limited and bound by the cultural property protection, even though the Hague Convention were applied, but wasn't used or respected, but they decided. It wasn't an easy decision because he was the commander, he was born around that region, so you can imagine what kind of pain in the military commander heart to destroy such a thing. The reason why I put this slide, because we educate our people that please be in your mindset, take into your mindset to find a way how to avoid these things, to destroy these things. Sometimes it's very hard. It's still happening. But there is always a reasoning behind it, a legitimate military target. But from the NATO side, I assume it's never ever happened to destroy any kind of cultural property, because our education is developing, and when it comes to operations, the mindset is start to developing to pay attention for these things. But again, it wasn't always the case. I'm not going into this education part, sorry for this slide, but what we consider or what you consider as a cultural property as it is. Sometimes we are asking our students that, do you think that only just physical or tangible thing can be cultural properties? Of course, the answer is no, from my understanding, because it can be even a person, even a habit, which you cannot touch it, but if you are disrespect that kind of habit, you will have the serious consequences on the other day, on the second day, and so on. Okay. How we operationalize it, as I mentioned, in a NATO high level, in a strategical level, by strategical level, there are directives which for NATO military side of the house, very important, because at least direct the military planners and thinkers how to approach this serious topic. So this is already done. As you see, there is our product, the Center of Excellence product, which is a booklet. It doesn't solve your problems, and it's not solving everything, but for military people, if they want to do a deep dive, then it's a good thing and bringing closer. So that was the reason why we developed this in Netherlands in the Center of Excellence. What we can do as a CIMICers, I put some things. It wasn't a new thing for the CIMIC, because CIMIC always reporting about the civil environment, and because of the reporting, we are reporting about the cultural side, because that's almost always part of the problem. What is the root cause of a conflict? And CIMIC can look behind behind the scene and try to identify the root cause. But to be honest, we can do so much because we are not experts. So we cannot protect the historical side. It's simply we are not enough for that. However, there are examples that military or battalions or even companies was attached to protect and guard cultural sites like in Iraq, Babylonian sites, and so on, but not doing restoration or saving it, just physical guarding, because that's our deal, the security. That's the military trade. We provide security. Okay. But in my trade in CIMIC, we have two things how we deal with this issue. We have site of major CIMIC significance and site of CIMIC significance. These are important. As you see, I made it bold with a black what we are reporting. We are the one, a kind of red card holder also within a military HQ, who are telling to the commander, and therefore we are not the most popular guy, that, sir, yes, you can do that. However, as you, sir, already mentioned, keeping away your commander from the jail, because he or she can involve in a act of crime, war, if he or she did not pay attention for a historical or cultural site, and the operation goes there or destruction will be done. So this is what we collect, among other things, critical infrastructure and so on, but we are the one, nobody else within, except if you have a designated unit. But again, that's not always the case. So for CIMICers, it wasn't a new thing. What are the challenges? Because I'm running out the time. The challenge is, again, that pre-deployment training is very important. We are using it in the Hungarian establishment also. For big NATO operation, not really a standardized, institutionalized training for particular operational area. This goes back to the nation's responsibility, but we know it very well in the NATO, 31 nation, 31 different approach, so that creates sometimes trouble. Booklets can help, trainings can help, but you cannot cover the whole manpower of a big operation. Afghanistan ISAF, it was 100,000 soldiers. It's impossible to educate every single soldier. That's a national responsibility, starts at the sending countries, NATO countries. So, other thing is the targeting. This is a very military terminus technicus in this regard. In the targeting in the military, they specify the targets, kinetic and non-kinetic, meaning physical destruction, non-physical destruction, and the CIMICers also the one to bring the non-kinetic part, and cultural property protection also part of these things. Again, we are the red holder if the commander pays attention. That, sir, if you target it or authorize it, this would be the consequences, second, third, fourth order effect, and maybe you can end up in a nice jail in Hague for a 24/7 too, for free accommodation. But that was a joke, anyhow. So, and that's my last slide, and I have 0 seconds. The reason why the military or NATO, and again talking about Hungarian armed force side of the house, is we are operating in a civil environment. Cultural property protection and the cultural properties is the so important attributum and features for a particular operational environment, civil environment. If we don't understand it, if we don't even having a situational awareness, I'm not talking about situational understanding because we are never understanding at different countries. If somebody telling you that he understood the Afghan society after 20 years, I would say I didn't understand it after 2 missions. It's a lie. We are not understanding. I don't understand even my culture as a Hungarian, so how I can understand the Afghans, believe me. So if we even not intend to understand it, then we do fail. So that's my conclusion in my golden nuggets regarding cultural property protection, sir. That concludes my set. Thank you for your attention.